Howdy folks, hope you've all had a good weekend, and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. I've had a busy week, an even busier weekend, mostly playing Starfield, more on that in a bit. But it's likely to be an even busier week coming up, because this week sees the launch of the long-awaited Phantom Liberty expansion for Cyberpunk 2077. I don't know where I'm going to find the time. Honestly, it's just... I've kind of finished Starfield. The thing is, you never really finish Starfield, because when you finish it, you start what they call New Game Plus, where you basically start again from the beginning, but with all of the stuff that you've acquired from your first playthrough. I can't really say a lot more without massive spoilers, but I've got that to look forward to. There's the Phantom Liberty expansion for Cyberpunk coming out, which, by the way, they just did a massive patch for Cyberpunk. If you haven't checked your Cyberpunk install, get yourself into Steam and have a look, because it's effectively Cyberpunk version 2.0. It's fundamentally changing the way just about everything works in Cyberpunk. All of your skills have been reset. They now work completely differently. I downloaded and installed the patch and then jumped into the game to see what was new, and I haven't got a clue how anything works anymore. But there have been huge improvements. You could argue improvements that really should have been in the game on launch more than 2 years ago. Things like the police system and the way that the Night City PD responds to crimes. Whereas previously they would just sort of teleport into existence. Now they actually patrol the city, the way they were supposed to, the way CD Projekt Red said they would when the game was launched. There are actual now police patrols and any police investigating crime scenes, which was in the original game. You'd be wandering around in the original game and you'd see the NCPD investigating a crime scene with the old police line, "Do not cross" holograms up. They're still there, and now they also respond to any crimes reported in their vicinity, but the police now drive patrols around the city, and those patrols will respond to any crimes reported in their vicinity, instead of having police just magically teleport on top of you anytime you committed a crime. So there's that. You're also now able to do things... How can I put this? Because of the way the skills have been reworked, you've got all kinds of holy shit, that's cool things that you can do. I don't know if you ever watched the Cyberpunk Edge Runners TV show, but the kind of sick acrobatic moves that you would see people doing in that, you can now do in the game. Like vault off a bike, do a somersault in midair, while blazing away with dual-wielding pistol. All that kind of really cool cyberpunk shit you can now do in the game if you pick the relevant skills. So you basically have to relearn how to play. And if you've got a modded version of the game, you're probably going to have to uninstall all of those mods, at least until the mod makers have had a chance to make everything compatible with Cyberpunk 2.0, which is basically what this new patch is in advance of the game coming out. Well, the expansion for the game, Phantom Liberty, coming out tomorrow. So I've got all of that to look forward to. I've got New Game Plus in Starfield. I still haven't quite gotten around to doing the System Shock remake. These are nice problems to have, because there was a period of time this year where there was just nothing worth playing. And it was only things like Dredge, which is due an expansion soon as well, apparently, and to a lesser degree, things like Bendy and the Dark Revival, and of course Choo Choo Charles, and then Aliens Dark Descent that kept me going. But now there is so much good stuff. I don't know where to start. Well, I'm probably going to start with Cyberpunk. Aliens Dark Descent is nearly done. I'm not entirely sure exactly how many videos are left in that series. Maybe 5 or 6? So 3 weeks at the most, and Aliens Dark Descent will be done. And that should give me time to learn how to play Cyberpunk again, given that absolutely everything's changed. And then some Cyberpunk videos. Don't worry, I have not forgotten about System Shock. It is coming, although at this point, when is anybody's guess. And I will be doing Starfield videos too. Not going to do a full playthrough, because that would take months. But there are certain of the side missions that are absolutely fantastic. In fact, probably my first 2 weeks playing Starfield, I didn't touch the main plot at all. I just did side missions, and it was glorious. Not entirely bug-free, because it's a Bethesda game after all. Oh, we may as well get into this. So, yeah, Starfield. Let me just start by saying I've absolutely loved it. It has been amazing. Having said that, you're probably not going to enjoy it if you enjoy Fallout 4 or Skyrim. You know, I was saying that Starfield is basically Fallout 4 in space. I mean, that's kind of true, but it's more accurate to say it's Skyrim in space. Again, before we go on any further, I need to make it absolutely clear that I love Starfield, but how can I put this? The first Starfield video I did, which was just a day one Starfield experience, I said that I hadn't encountered any bugs at all. And that was true, but it didn't last long. Now, I haven't actually encountered that many game-breaking bugs. Well, technically, I suppose I have. There are certain of the side missions that I was just unable to complete because of bugs. The main mission and the big side missions, no problems. But some of the smaller ones, like for example, I met somebody on Mars who wanted me to try to square things up with her father, and in order to break the ice, I had to give him a bottle of his favourite wine, and then head to the city of Neon, where he's staying in a hotel. And I couldn't do the mission because his hotel room door wouldn't open. So apparently this is a known bug, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can just kiss goodbye to ever getting that mission completed. But it's a tiny little side mission, so yeah, big deal. Also in the same hotel, the hotel owner has some kind of special deal going with the hopelessly corrupt Neon City security force. But she won't tell you about it unless you spend a couple of nights in the hotel. So I spent a week in the hotel, and she keeps saying she won't tell me about it unless I spend a couple of nights in the hotel. So that one's hopelessly bugged as well. But again, minor quest. Don't really care that much. There are certain other things about the game, though, that... how shall we put this? You remember what happened with Fallout 76 when Bethesda tried to do something, well, new and at least moderately original? Well, as original as anything can be set in the Fallout universe, but you know what I mean. They said, oh, we'll do Fallout, but multiplayer, and they had zero experience of doing anything multiplayer. And the reason that everybody loved Bethesda games wasn't because they were technically competent, right? Because they're always riddled with bugs. It was the story, the plot, the dialogue, the character interaction. So Fallout 76 basically removed all of that, and the only thing that was left were the bugs, right? So it was just this massive dumpster fire. And it wasn't even the game itself, although that was bad enough. Bethesda also managed to screw up everything even peripherally connected to the game that wasn't the game. So all of the advertising, the marketing, the pre-orders, absolutely everything Bethesda touched regarding Fallout 76 turned to shit. And I honestly think that what we're seeing in Starfield is a direct result of the Fallout 76 dumpster fire and Todd Howard turning around to all of the people at Bethesda and saying, right, that's it. For this new game, I do not want to see anything original. Just take everything that everybody loved about Skyrim and Fallout 4, do it all again, and put a cosmetic space skin on it. And that's all we want. And then somebody said, well, can we put space combat in? Can you do it without fucking it up? Yeah, we think so. Make sure. But other than that, I want nothing that wasn't in Skyrim or Fallout 4. And that is basically more or less exactly what Starfield is. And I say Skyrim in particular, because while I basically didn't touch the main quest for the first 2 weeks of playing the game, I just had a great time playing all of the side missions. Once you do start on the main storyline quest, you suddenly realise you're playing Skyrim. You remember the Dragonborn in Skyrim? And do you remember the dragon shouts? Yeah. They've taken that from Skyrim, put a space skin on it, and dumped it straight into Starfield. The lack of originality is shocking. I mean, it's just the second I started actually progressing the main storyline quest, I just started thinking, hang on a minute. This is Skyrim. They haven't even really tried to hide it that much. I mean, in Skyrim, you're the Dragonborn, and in Starfield, you're the Starborn. At one point, when taking on these Starborn powers, I fully expected to start shouting Fuzroda at some point. I mean, you've even got the same fucking power. Seriously, the lack of originality is mind-boggling. And I don't care. I suspect most people playing Starfield ain't going to care, because they're just happy to have a Bethesda game that works and does what Bethesda's good at. Even if that means they are 100% recycling everything that they've done over the last 15 years, just with a space skin on it. And I'm fine with that, because it's nice to see Bethesda getting back to what they do well, even if they're taking absolutely no chances this time around, which is understandable given, what happened to Fallout 76. But they could have at least made... And again, I'm not really complaining here, I'm more amused, because I really, really have enjoyed playing Starfield. But they could have at least tried just a little bit to make it less obvious that this was basically just Skyrim all over again. I mean, aside from the old Dragonborn, Starborn, and the dragon shouts and the Starborn powers, but do you remember when you first start Skyrim, and very early on you get directed towards the town of Whiterun, and then you come across this group called the Companions, and you're invited to join them, and they've got their own place, their own lodge, inside Whiterun, which is your headquarters. In Starfield, all of your companions belong to a group called Constellation, and they have their own place in Jemison City on Alpha Centauri. It's even called The Lodge. You see where I'm going with this? And again, I don't really care. I mean, I'm only giving you a couple of examples here, but I see all of these, what are essentially cut and pastes from Skyrim and Fallout 4 popping up in Starfield. They know exactly what they're doing. And they're not embarrassed at all. There are so many references to Fallout 4 and Skyrim in this game. There's a skill, for example, it's called Cripple, which allows you to... it doesn't matter what it does. Should be fairly self-explanatory just from the name of the skill alone, but the skill icon on the skill page, it's an arrow going through somebody's knee. You even come across an NPC at one point who says, "Oh, an explorer. I used to be an explorer once, but then I... Actually, you know what? It's a long story." If you've played Skyrim, you know what I'm talking about. Actually, even if you haven't played Skyrim, you know what I'm talking about, because the memes about taking an arrow through the knee have, they're everywhere. So, yeah. The problem here, because there's always going to be a problem, it's Bethesda, is that while... I don't really have much of an issue with them basically just lifting stuff wholesale from Skyrim and Fallout 4, slapping a new coat of paint on it, and plonking it down in Starfield. As long as they've only done that with the good bits. They haven't just done that with the good bits. There are complaints. The Companions, in fact the NPC AI in general, is just horrifically bad. I genuinely do not believe that Bethesda have made the slightest bit of improvement to non-player character AI and companion characters in particular since Skyrim. I think it must be the same code, because if they have tried to improve it and it's still just as bad as it was in Skyrim, If the NPC and companion AI in Starfield is the best that they were able to do after 12 years of development since Skyrim came out, then a bunch of people need to lose their jobs. It is so incredibly bad. You've got a whole bunch of these different companions to choose from, and you're clearly expected to form relationships with them in the same way that you do with your party members in Baldur's Gate 3, in the same way that you did with your companions in games that did it right, like Dragon Age, for example. Actually, the Mass Effect series is probably the better example of doing it right, where because it's exactly the same as here in Starfield. You know, it's a first/third-person shooter where you have companion AI that follows you around, but in Mass Effect 3, they're useful, they don't get in the way, and you form meaningful relationships with them in the way that you're clearly supposed to in Starfield, but it just doesn't work because they get in your way, you're blazing away at a bunch of enemies, and these idiots run in front of you, take a bullet, and then immediately get a massive strop on, throw a hissy fit, quit your group, and abandon you, and then you have to spend time chasing them down to wherever it is they've run off to in order to sulk, and spend time apologising to them for something that was their fault in the first place before they will agree to join your group again until the next time they decide to run in front of a bullet. And you have to repeat the whole process, losing affinity with them every time this happens. And it's completely unavoidable because they are such massive idiots. The AI controlling them is so bad. And I did try. I mean, I tried to explore some of the affinity options with one of the companions, but that meant having that companion actually join my group and follow me around in the world, and they just kept running in front of my gun and getting shot and abandoning the group and getting a massive hissy fit on with me, and eventually it was just, I gave up. It was just more effort than it was worth. I would have loved to have seen what was going to happen with some of the affinity options, but in order to do that, you have to go out and play the game with one of these companions as your sidekick, and it was just more trouble than it was worth. So I just retained them as crew on board my ships and had them manning my outposts, and I never got to know any of them, which is a shame because the voice acting and the writing and the dialogue with these companions is very, very good, but you're never going to progress it without tearing your hair out in frustration over how mind-bogglingly stupid they are and constantly getting in the way. So I just didn't bother, which meant I never formed any relationships with these characters, which meant that when one of them died, and that's not necessarily a spoiler, by the way, because I mean, I don't know. Based on certain choices that you make, the companion in question might not actually die, depending on how you approach the circumstances surrounding what leads up to the death. But in my playthrough, this certain character did die. And I didn't care. Because I hadn't formed a relationship with them. Because the AI was so bad. It was more trouble than it was worth. And you were clearly supposed to care. I mean, again, Mass Effect, a perfect example of how to do it right. When Doc Morbin died in Mass Effect, and he wasn't even my favourite companion character. I mean, if Tali had died, I would have been devastated, but I was still gutted when Doc Morbin died, a character that I never actually used as a companion, if given the choice. But because he was so well written, I cared about him, and when he died, I was gutted. But in Starfield, didn't give a shit. It's just hadn't formed a relationship with any of these companion characters because it was just too much trouble to do so. And you were clearly supposed to care because after they died, there was the game made a huge thing out of it. Everybody got together to hold a memorial for them. Everybody talked about their feelings, and I was just skipping the dialogue options to get it over and done with so I could get back to playing the game. Because I didn't care. And that's the game's fault, not mine. If you want me to care about a character, then you need to make having that character around not be a massive pain in the arse. Speaking of massive pains in the arse, and this is also kind of related to the non-player character AI, although not your companions this time, but the AI in general is kind of bad. The thing is, when the enemy AI is bad, it's not that noticeable. It certainly doesn't have as big an impact as when the companion AI is just as bad. But the enemy AI is still pretty not good. And it's particularly apparent when you're trying to do a stealth mission. Because the stealth in Starfield sucks donkey balls as well. There was one quest line in particular, and it was a fantastic quest line, that was almost ruined by just how bad the stealth is, because there's at least 2 missions in the Ryujin Corporation. Oh, speaking of a startling lack of originality, I need to talk about the Ryujin Corporation. Then we'll come on to the stealth. Oh, right, yeah. I'd almost forgotten about this one. So, very early on in the game, you're given a mission to get a job with the Ryujin Corporation. So they're located in the city of Neon on some planet or other. When you first go to the city of Neon, you might get an alarming sense of deja vu and think, hang on a second, this all looks very familiar, because the city of Neon is basically Night City from Cyberpunk 2077. I mean, it's nowhere near as big or as expansive as Night City, but the general aesthetic, it's Night City from Cyberpunk. And the principal megacorporation in Neon City is the Ryujin Corporation. Just as the principal megacorporation in Cyberpunk was the Arasaka Corporation. Ryujin, Arasaka. Well, okay, just because, you've got 2 Japanese named megacorporations running things in cities that bear striking similarities to each other doesn't necessarily mean they're ripping off Cyberpunk. Yeah, it kind of does, though. Both Japanese megacorporations, both evil, both in strikingly similar locations, and they both even have the same fucking colour scheme. Everybody at Ryujin wears black and red. The Arasaka, I mean, they're not even trying to hide it at this point. Anyway, so I'm doing these missions, which involve lots and lots of industrial espionage. And this one mission in particular, I mean, conceptually it was fantastic. The execution left a lot to be desired, however. So I'm infiltrating this building, I have to get in, undetected of course, it's a stealth mission, and then do a whole bunch of sneaky stuff while I'm in there, and then get out. Now, historically I'm not particularly good at stealth missions, but this is an RPG, it's a role-playing game, and it's not really so much about how sneaky you are as how good your stealth skills are. And at the point where I was attempting this mission, I had almost maxed out stealth. Right, I had 3 out of 4 points in stealth. Enemies had 75% less chance to detect me, and I was also wearing a stealth suit that further reduced my chances of being detected by another 25%. Plus, I mean, you can further stack the odds in your favour by taking all kinds of pharmaceuticals and stims and stuff that will further reduce your chance of being detected. So in theory, I should have been bulletproof. In practice, however, oh my god, it was a clusterfuck from start to finish. I was getting spotted by guards on the other side of walls. It was that bad. And that was bad enough. But then that, in combination with the extremely dodgy non-player character AI, made... Honestly, I have no idea how I successfully managed to complete this mission. Because I was... You know in Skyrim when you've committed a crime? Right, the guards will come running after you, and if they catch you, it takes control of your character away from you, and the guard basically says, right, that's it. You're nicked, my old son. Off to jail you go. And you get an option. You can like pay your fine, or you can attempt to resist arrest and fight your way out. Yeah? Exactly the same thing, because this is basically Skyrim in space, exactly the same thing happens in Starfield. So I've gotten spotted from the other side of a wall by one of these guards, and I should probably point out, by the way, that the only way I was able to successfully complete these stealth missions were because you don't technically actually have to do them while remaining undetected the entire time. You can get spotted. You're just not allowed to leave any bodies lying around. So you go in with non-lethal weapons. So this guard spots me from the other side of a wall while I'm supposedly in stealth. He comes running around and runs over and tries to arrest me. So I unload into his face with the EM blaster, stun him, knock him unconscious, and he's lying there on the ground at my feet, and he's still attempting to arrest me. The dialogue still pops up. And I got arrested by an unconscious guard. That needs to be on a t-shirt somewhere. I mean, the general stealth options in Starfield are pretty good. You know, when you're just sneaking around a complex and you're killing a bunch of pirates and you're getting stealth shots off and so on and so on. That works just fine. But when you're actually trying to do a stealth mission, you know, a mission in a quest line that's been specifically written that requires the successful use of stealth rather than just finding a pirate base on some procedurally generated planet and trying to, you know, maximize your damage by getting a couple of stealth kills before you go in all guns blazing, as you inevitably are going to do as soon as you get spotted. Yeah, that's fine. But an actual stealth mission, something that requires a stealth system that actually works and non-player character AI that reacts appropriately to people in stealth. Yeah, no, Starfield doesn't have that. It has the opposite of that. Notwithstanding all of these complaints, though, it's still a good game. In the same way that Skyrim and Fallout 4 were both good games despite being riddled with bugs, because everything that isn't a bug is good. And most people would seem to agree. I mean, 56,000 reviews on Steam, they're mostly positive, and all of those players have experienced exactly the same problems that I have. And despite my earlier claims, I mean, Starfield isn't completely unoriginal, because they do have stuff in there that wasn't in Skyrim and wasn't in Fallout 4. The Starship Builder, for example. So the ability to customize and essentially build your own ship. That is really, really good. It's a bit overwhelming at first. When you first get into the ship builder side of it, it can feel like there's way too many options, but it's pretty logical. It works reasonably well, and people have been getting incredibly creative, not just min-maxing builds to get the best possible bang for your buck out of your ship, but also they've been coming up with, well, I've seen people flying around in the Razor Crest from The Mandalorian, the Republic Cruiser from Star Wars, the Phantom Menace. I've seen Klingon Birds of Prey. I mean, not personally, it's a single-player game, but if you go into YouTube, people have been coming up with all kinds of amazing ship builds. And it does work, which is kind of surprising because it's the first and probably only new thing that they put into Starfield that wasn't in Skyrim or Fallout 4. And it works very, very well. So, I mean, yeah, I've been having a lot of fun. Despite all of the complaints, a lot of fun playing Starfield. No, it's not perfect. Of course it isn't. It's a Bethesda game. Perfect and Bethesda, those two words don't belong in the same sentence unless it's Fallout 76 by Bethesda was a perfect dumpster fire. But what does work works very, very well. What doesn't work you can mostly avoid without too many consequences. And of course, you've got the New Game Plus thing, which is something else that's new that they're doing in Starfield that they didn't do in Skyrim and they didn't do in Fallout 4. Because when you play through Skyrim and Fallout 4 and you finish the main story, well, that's pretty much it. There's not an awful lot else to do. But with the New Game Plus, when you do finish the main story in Starfield, you can do not necessarily the whole thing again, because there's guaranteed to be stuff that you've missed, but, well, sort of the whole thing again, because it gives you the option of going right back to the start with the same character and doing it all again, but this time maybe trying things differently and seeing what you missed the first time around. And you're not quite a new character, because when I completed the game I was level 82, and my New Game Plus started with a level 82 character with all the skills that I'd learned, some new special Starborn gear that is not available to brand new characters, and all of the dragon shouts, sorry, the Starborn powers that you've acquired, and with the option of improving them and making them more powerful in your second playthrough. So, unlike with Skyrim and Fallout 4, the replayability in Starfield is pretty good. In particular, I'm thinking of something that I want to try differently. Again, very, very early on in my initial playthrough, I came across a ship, just like, well, not just like this. This is a Starborn ship. You can't steal a Starborn ship. They're inaccessible. Well, at least they were on my first playthrough. Whether that's the case in a New Game Plus, I don't know. But the point is, I came across a ship crewed by a bunch of space pirates, and it had just landed near me while I was out exploring a planet. I killed them and I took their ship. It's a free ship. I mean, you can do this. Well, what happened was I didn't bother checking the cargo hold, and of course there's some contraband in there. So the next time I jumped into a planet in the United Colonies, I got stopped for a contraband scan, and of course there's contraband in the cargo hold, and I got arrested. So what happened then is and this wasn't my fault. I mean, I'd done the galaxy a favour by killing a bunch of pirates and neutralising a pirate ship. It wasn't my fault that there was contraband in the cargo hold. I mean, I should have checked, but I didn't. So anyway, I get arrested, I get hauled off to Mars for interrogation. So I'm sitting there fully expecting to be able to explain the situation and end up getting sent along my merry way with a pat on the back and a well done. And, be more careful next time. But that is the exact opposite of what happened. Instead, this United Colonies System Defence interrogator tries to stitch me up, dangling the threat of arrest over my head for the contraband in the cargo hold, and tries to press gang and force me into going undercover and infiltrating a bunch of pirates in order to take them down from the inside. And if I don't do it, he's going to throw me in jail. If he just asked me, space pirates, System Defence Force. System Defence are clearly the good guys. If the good guys had just said to me, look, we could really use your help here, the pirates have no idea who you are, would you be willing to go undercover and help us bring down this pirate network? I would have probably jumped at the chance. But he didn't do that, did he? He tried to force me into it with the threat of arrest if I didn't cooperate. So I told him to go fuck himself. In fact, I went one step further. After serving get this right, 4 days, that was my jail sentence for having contraband in the cargo hold. 4 whole days of jail time. I looked up the pirates and I joined them, and I did this massive and fantastic pirate quest line, all of which culminated, well, I'm straying into spoiler territory here, but let's just say, given how the United Colonies System Defence treated me at the beginning of this quest line, the culmination of the quest was very satisfying. And also stupidly profitable. So, yeah, that's what I did on the first playthrough. I might try it, see how it works the other way around on the second playthrough. And then, of course, there's all of the other stuff that I just missed. Either because I just didn't notice it, wrong place, wrong time, or by the time I started eventually getting around to the main storyline quest, it was so good that I just powered on through. Or possibly because of certain choices that I made throughout the storyline, certain quest lines were opened up and certain other ones were closed off. Because I know that if you're in the good graces of one particular faction, then that shuts off quest options from another faction, for example. So there's all kinds of replayability here, which I'm very much looking forward to discovering. And I better get a move on because I've got exactly 1 day before Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty comes out. So yeah, it's been a busy but a very, very good week. And I sincerely hope you've all had as good a week as I have, because that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode of Mingles with Jingles, which, let's face it, has really been the Starfield episode. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.